Well, this morning we've woken up to some particularly, I think, quite good news. This is, of course, the announcement that Labour is going to renationalise a lot of our rail contracts. And I now have to wonder what the response is going to be from everyone else, possibly on the left, who said that, oh, Labour is not going to do this, that, oh, Labour are breaking promises, etc., etc., etc. We'll see in time, of course, what their response would be. But I am going to look forward to it because we've probably got a lot of other things where they're going to have to either A, go back on what they're saying and say, oh no, actually, we were wrong about Labour. How many will actually admit that will be very interesting. Or they'll have to try and find some new convoluted way to blame Labour for everything else. But of course, I've talked about nationalization, of course, before. And the big problem with is nationalization is people do like it. But the problem then becomes is what do you nationalize? Rail, as we've talked about before, when you talk, what do you want to nationalize, always comes well out and above on the top of these rankings. People have seen just how bad the rate of the privatization of the rails is. If you haven't, just try traveling east to west on our great British railway system and find out how bad it really is. North to south, generally a lot easier, but even then, you are probably going to find a lot of problems even then. But the big problem here is, as always, great, you're going to nationalize the rail system. The question then becomes, then what? And of course, that problem is, and it always is, that even if you nationalize the rail system, does not solve the main problem that the railway system is facing at the moment. And that is, of course, the problem of capacity. And how would you solve that capacity problem? Well, you've got to build HS2. Or unless you build HS2, you ain't going to solve that capacity problem. But these plans, of course, are going to be sort of quite welcomed. I think the idea that they are talking about streamlining a lot of the the rail services is sort of into sort of one big company, I think is going to be a good idea. Uh, Getting rid of a lot of the bloat that the private rail companies have sort of brought in. Like I say, you don't need a fragmented system. You can all just have now one system under one railway company, which is going to be sort of pretty good. Of course, this does not include freight. It does not include sort of the rail stock companies, which again, fine. There are plans out there before this of not nationalizing those sections before, so that's fine as well. But like I say, we'll see how all this eventually works out. But before we go into this and more of the plans that they promised to do, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and an off-donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, there is the YouTube thank you button down below. Called the Pony Club, where you can join that as well. And of course, thank you very much to all the people who do help support the channel by just clicking the like and the share button. Like I say, it all helps. So, as always, thank you very much to all the people who do help and support the channel. So, what came out, of course, of this? Well, essentially, these plans would entail the full nationalization of the train network within 5 to 4 years. Most of the rail contracts will run out within 4. Obviously, there will be a transition period. This is where you get sort of the 5-year term. So by the end of Labour's first term, we will be seeing a full nationalised sort of rail network system under now in charge. This again could, and we say could, lead to cheaper fares. How they are going to achieve those cheaper fares, we don't know. Obviously, one of the big benefits of this is that there's going to be sort of less money going out of the system. That could now mean remain in the system. You are talking about keeping or at least making a saving by nationalizing the rail system at least £2.2 billion. So that is going to be a lot of money saved by renationalizing the system. But it's again, where do you use that money? Where do you use it effectively? Do you use it to build more rail networks? Do you use it to build sort of HS2, which again, you need to do? You cannot get out of not building HS2. The longer you put it off, the worse this is. I would have loved it, honestly, loved it if they come out this morning and said, we're going to do this. And on top of this, the savings that we're going to make, we're going to sort of invest all that money into building HS2. That would have been the absolute cherry on the top of the cake of this morning's announcement. Now, that may still come. That may still come because all the rail experts have been very, very clear since the cancellation of this. You cannot solve the British railway system's problem by just not building HS2. HS2 is the best way to solve the problem of the British Railways, which is a capacity problem. How do you solve that? You move the fast trains onto the HS2 track. This improves your services for everything else on the current system. So, yeah, when we've been through that, I don't know how many times before, but it is something really, really need to do. The other thing that they want to set up as well is a passenger standards authority, which I think is going to be quite good. So this is now what is going to sort of deal with passenger concerns, passengers, sort of, what they should expect being on the railways, and this is what it's going to sort of look after sort of their concerns. I think that is something very good to sort of set up. This is being quite considered, and it should be what is going along apparently now with some of or at least what are now being expected to be sort of more radical proposals. So we're going to hear potentially a lot more of this stuff about what Labour now plans to do in power, because I think they know there is going to be a general election sooner or later. Consider this them stealing a march at the moment. So again, we'll see how all this, of course, plays out. And this is really to sort of highlight what obviously Starmer is going to do in government. This is really going to sort of highlight like what years almost, or at least in the current sort of Conservative government, the complete inaction that they themselves are pretty much doing. And once again, it is worth reminding, nationalisation is not going to be the silver bullet that solves all the British trains problem. Yes, we're going to save over 2.2 billion pounds a year that can go back into the system, but that has to be used to then build HS2. Otherwise, it's not going to be it's not going to work. And of course, there's a lot of rail industry experts have welcomed this. This plan, the Great British Railway, you've probably heard it before. This actually came up by Grant Shapps, who was using this as a threat to the railway companies to say, if you do not shape up your act, we are going to nationalize you. Well, it didn't use that word nationalize you, but we're going to sort of bring you back under our control. It was nationalization in all but name, at least Grant Shapps' plan. And of course, since 2018, how many railway companies have been brought under that? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So now you have a very sort of clear plan to sort of renationalize and rebring these companies back in. And of course, a lot of those private companies are now lamenting that change, not obviously surprising, but they have had well over three, almost 4 decades now to prove that rail privatization can work, that it would be a better benefit to the UK. And instead, that hasn't worked out. Instead, we have seen a declining service over the number of years, more delays than ever. Um, and of course, part of the reason why our system is an absolute mess is it is just so fragmented and broken apart. And the other thing they did mention about was creating an integrated transport network system. So that could be a very, very big step forward, because that is where we really need to be, not just about sort of trails, but buses, trams, and everything else you can think of in between, of how this all interconnects. So the fact that you've got some joined up thinking is quite revolutionary, because we've sort of not had that for quite some time, and that's going to be sort of quite exciting. What plans could be coming from that? So, as always, let me know what you think down below in the comments, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.